Welcome back to Paranormal, the New Normal. I'm your host, as always, Jeremy, here to try to make the world seem a little more normal. Does it ever happen? Sometimes, and today we actually might kind of hit that a little bit, so yay. And to help me do that, of course, I have a great guest as always, and my guest tonight is Dean Graves, consciousness researcher, author, and a lot more, but we'll get into all that in a few minutes. But first things first, how you doing tonight, Dean?
I'm doing very well, Jeremy. Thank you for asking. I hope you're doing well too.
Of course. I get to talk to another great guest. Always means I'm doing well. Well, to get to start off right, the first question I always ask everybody on this show is, what got you into, well, I guess for you, I'll say the spirituality aspect of life that brought you to what you research?
um, well, that's a good question. The majority of my life I would just characterize as a normal life, not really concerned about spirituality to any degree or anything other than what I guess would be characterized as normal. About It's been about 20 to 25 years ago now. My spouse and I began meditating, and through those meditations, we began to have some pretty significant awarenesses and experiences during or as while we were meditating, and those led us deeper and deeper into exploration of what it was we were experiencing, what we were encountering. And she died in 2011, and the experiences continued and intensified for me. So, what got us into it? What I guess I could characterize it as an awakening, but unlike most people's perspective of an awakening, awakening is simply a point of dissatisfaction the way that you've been running your life. And so, consequently, we determined jointly to do things differently. And that led us on the path that we followed since, and I'm still following.
Well, first things first, very sorry to hear about your wife, of course. That's
Well,
horrible.
thank
I
you.
couldn't imagine losing my wife. That'd be horrible. But that's interesting. I mean, meditation, I've heard a lot, does unlock, if you do it long enough and you do it right, you will unlock things that you, because from what I've been told, everybody has abilities that they can unlock. Everybody has some kind of specialty they can unlock if they meditate, if they focus, if they figure out how to basically figure out the puzzle is the best way to put it, I think, is figure out the puzzle that is our brains.
Well, the brain is obviously part of the body, but the mind is separate from the brain, and the mind informs the brain, and so the brain is the way it is because it has been instructed by the mind to be a certain way. And when you can get past, if you think of we structure the brain, and if you think of the brain as a filter, or sometimes it's easier to think of it as a bowling lane with the kid stoppers up on either side. And as long as you have the stoppers up on either side, then there's only, you can't really mess up. You can just stay within the lane. And when you take those bumpers down, then you open up the whole parameters of the bowling alley. And taking the mind has instructed the brain to be the way that it is with those bumpers up. And when you put those bumpers down, then all sorts of opportunities open up to you.
Exactly. And I mean, that makes sense. It makes sense. I like the bowling alley analogy. I really do. So, what would you say technically is consciousness? Since that is the main aspect of your research.
Everything that we experience, including ourselves, is consciousness. Consciousness, defined, is our creatorness intoxicated with free will. And that requires some unpacking. We are the one infinite creator, intoxicated to varying degrees with free will. And free will has been a topic of conversation for philosophy for centuries, but it is generally misunderstood. And the usual topic or argument about free will is that do we have the choice of going right or going left, or is this all predetermined, or is our life requiring us to go right or to go left or whatever? That is all a product of free will. Free will is the perception of separation. So we perceive ourselves to be separate from the creator. And so consequently, we perceive ourselves to have free will. That perception of separation functions according to its degree of intensity as an intoxicant. So all of consciousness that we experience is intoxicated with free will to varying degrees. That intoxication restricts or moderates our degree of awareness. And what distinguishes consciousness throughout creation is that degree of awareness. Everything that we experience is consciousness, which includes everything from inorganic matter to things that we perceive to be of the paranormal, which are simply beyond our capacity to be aware of. Mm-hmm. And so our process as participants in creation is to, by having experiences, explore ourselves, surrender, lower those bumpers along the bowling alley, and to liberate ourselves from the intoxicating effects, or sober from the intoxicating effects of free will.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. It does. It's just, well, what am I trying to say here? Even, I mean, so well, okay, a lot of questions out of that one.
Okay.
But the first question I'm gonna go with is, what do you think about fate? Because you're saying that we can go left or right, and we're not sure if it's predetermined or not. So that, of course, made me go to fate and the possibility of it.
Well, we would determine the path of our fate. The ultimate end of our journey is inevitable. It's immutable and it's inevitable. It is the reunification with the one infinite creator. But how we get there is entirely up to us. And therein is the benefit of free will. The purpose of creation, very simply, is so that the one infinite creator might know itself by experiencing itself. We are analog projections of the one infinite creator that function at, relatively speaking, a very low level of consciousness. And so consequently, there's much that we are unaware of. We who experience the physical world are an analog projection of our metaphysical self, which is in an eternal, unending consciousness pattern that we have created as a result of our variety of experiences through a multitude of incarnations. And so consequently, what we experience while we are alive in the physical world is, I describe it in using metaphors is the easiest way to explain this to people. If you imagine that we're on a sports team, what we're experiencing now is the game. This is the game on Friday night or Saturday night or whatever. But in between games, we practice, we review game films, we get coached, we get instructed, we figure out what we could have done better or we did wrong in the last game, and we commit to making changes and doing better in the next game. And so, with that learning, we reincarnate again, but we reincarnate in the condition that we have advanced to in our consciousness being. So, each lifetime begins, hopefully on a progressive scale, but not necessarily, to lead us further down the evolutionary path. The evolutionary path is precisely the same as the enlightenment path. Enlightenment is progression along the evolutionary scale. And so we who experience Earth for a variety of reasons have been mired in a narrow range of the more general range of consciousness that we all participate in. And we perceive varieties of success within that general range of consciousness, but as a whole have not been able to elevate our median level beyond the lower dimensions of the range is called the density. The general range is called the density, and the incremental steps within the range are called dimensions. And we as a population remain mired in the lower densities of lower dimensions of the density. And so we consequently, we appear and historically have recorded that we cycle within the lower dimensions, not really making significant progress as a population.
Once again, so many questions on that statement. But you hit the word I was going to ask about if you didn't hit it, which is reincarnation. And by the way you were talking, I had a feeling that you did believe in reincarnation, and that, I mean, the way it's been described to me by one person, I can never remember who said it to me, but one of my guests said to me that when we die, our spirit goes to basically a DMV waiting room in space somewhere or in another dimension, and we're basically just waiting for our turn to come up to hop into the next body that's available. And
well, yeah, it's not that quick. I mean, we choose when we are ready to reincarnate again, and our consciousness pattern is our metaphysical self. The metaphysical is just simply you would call it a different dimension. It is not physical. There is perception of physicality for we who are within the lower dimensions of that density, but it is not physical as we would identify as physical. But that notwithstanding, we are a consciousness pattern, and we do have perception of a body, and that is in our enduring self. We, in this range of consciousness, and there are lots of parallel or competing, not really competing, just other experiences like Earth throughout creation. In our galaxy, which is a fairly large galaxy, there are approximately 67 million planets that host a range of consciousness of the lower 5 densities. And of that 67 million, approximately 26% of those share the same range of consciousness that we do. So just within our galaxy, that's a lot of other planets that are experiencing this range of consciousness. Very few, if any, have the same difficulties that we are experiencing on Earth. And so they have a more diversified experience within their planetary experience.
Which makes sense, because I also was just discussing this the other night on a show, that when you come back, like, we can come back within different species bodies. It doesn't have to be a human body.
Well, not really. You can choose to go to another planet. I mean, you can leave this experience if it's just not working out for you. You can work a deal to leave this this planetary experience. And matter of fact, Earth has been considered a second chance planet. So all of the third density participants seeking graduation have failed to graduate in other third density experiences. And we are an accumulation of 16 different species is not really the right word, but 16 other experiences that have failed to graduate. So we're kind of like reform school for our participants here.
So basically, we're the bad kids in the back of the class that couldn't get it right the first time.
Well, we're the slow kids, and there are reasons for that. It's not a bad thing because it's all experience, and you know our purpose is, as I mentioned at the beginning, is to explore. And there's no right, there's no wrong. We experience right and wrong because things either feel good or they don't feel good, and that is an emotion. That in and of itself is an emotion. And when we experience things we don't like, then we tend to reject that and not include that part as part of our experience again, or if we can avoid it, not include it again. If we do include it, it's because it feels good. We are all motivated to get more of what we like. Now, what we like varies by individuals, but that notwithstanding, as we progress in our evolutionary path, in our enlightenment path, then what we do like becomes more refined and more common. There's less diversity of what we like because our degree of understanding and our degree of perception of separation decreases. And so ultimately, the end of evolution, the end of creation, is the reunification with the Creator. And that the more we can align with our creatorness, then the better we feel. So when we don't feel good, it is because some aspect of ourselves are a hindrance to our realignment.
Makes sense. I mean, it makes sense. So, I mean, this is kind of strange for me because, I mean, growing up in the 90s, you almost never heard the word creator and evolution in the same sentence unless it was saying, if you believe in one, you can't believe in the other. But,
Yeah.
I mean, I love
Well,
that nowadays they can go together.
well, they are synonymous. You know, the evolution that they taught in schools or in science were a biological evolution. And biological evolution is transient. It changes, whimsically changes, not from pure whimsy, but the purpose of an incarnation of what we consider to be plants or animals. That's second density. We're third density. Plants and animals, organic matter is second density. It's a lower awareness, and the body types are created to facilitate the greatest learning of consciousness at that level, at that dimension. And so, consequently, when a body type proves unproductive to reap the greatest learning possibilities at that range of consciousness, then it's discontinued and another one is introduced. And so new species are constantly introduced in every planetary experience that hosts a second density experience.
All right. So, I mean, you're saying biological evolution is different from spirit evolution in a way. I mean, they're two different topics, basically.
Well, the evolution of spirit is the evolution of us, of our consciousness. Second density and first density, which is inorganic matter, are deemed to be they haven't the awareness to assume responsibility for their own evolution. And so they are considered to be foundational densities. And we have several foundational densities within our solar system that simply haven't matured enough in order to host a second density experience. What we call Venus was originally called Genoa. We began one of the 16 groups of people that participate in the Earth experience began our evolutionary path in third density on Genoa about 850,000 years ago. And through a variety of mishaps, we essentially blew the planet up and destroyed the atmosphere. We began another experience on what was Maldek and the asteroid belt that is between, I think, outside of Mars, that science just kind of dismisses as a weird anomaly. Used to be a planet. It was called Maldek, and we began a third density experience there, and we blew the whole planet up. And we were. I'm sorry?
I'm seeing a pattern here.
Yeah, well, there is a consistent pattern. We went to Mars after that, and we blew the environment off of Mars. We did a period of healing and ended up on Earth. And this is for the now Genoa was a successful third density experience for billions of years until we blew it up, blew the atmosphere off of the planet and made it like it is today. But it was a successful third density experience continuously. A third density experience has a time frame. It lasts approximately 76,000 years, and then you begin another one. But that this is the fifth. We just finished a third density experience on Earth, which is the first one that we successfully finished in 5 tries. So in other words, we completed the 76,000 years without destroying the planet, but we did have a fairly major hiccup in that Atlantis was a real continent that we sunk. It sunk below the waves of the Atlantic Ocean approximately 8441 BC. And so we had to begin again. And the Upanishads, the material that's included in the Upanishads, were preserved from that time in the Earth's history. And we are where we are today, having restored significantly population size since Atlantis's demise. So yes, there's a very definitive pattern, and that is this cycling within the lower dimensions of the density have made possible this destructive behavior that we have repeated numerous times. So the planet itself has evolved, and what is commonly referred to as Gaia is the consciousness of the planet itself has evolved to fourth density. And we who are third density analog projections of our metaphysical self are essentially on our last incarnation, because all of the children that have been born since 2005, approximately in that area, are fourth density. They're higher consciousness. They have graduated from third density, and will obviously, as they mature, will be assuming occupancy as we older consciousness experiences die off, and we will be relocated to another planet that's being formed within the solar system.
Interesting as could be. That whole monologue right there was so many things come to mind, but one, for the first time in my life, I wish I was younger than I usually. I wish I was older than I am, but for the first time in my life, I wish I was born later than I was. Because in 2005, 6, I was graduating high school, so
Well,
I was.
you're as young as you think you are, Jeremy.
But I want the hard consciousness. But I mean, that makes sense in a way though, because I mean, the whole point of my show, Paranormal: The New Normal, is that paranormal has become the new normal in the last 5, 10 years, 15 years. And if what you just said, I mean, that perfectly explains it because these newer generations are more wired to it. Their consciousness is more open to it. And now all of them are becoming either into Reiki, into mediumship, psychicness, all these different avenues of opening your consciousness and being able to do certain things and helping people. I mean, it's
Yeah, and service to others. This is one of the things that is part of the curriculum of third density is we are required to make a choice, and the choice is very simple: that we are going to polarize service to self or service to others. Service to others is considered to be the positive path, and it is aligning more closely with the Creator. Service to self is considered to be the negative path, and it is self-oriented. And what we are experiencing on Earth right now is the dichotomy of the folks who have chosen the service to self path, but not to a sufficient degree to graduate to fourth density, but they are fighting to maintain control of, they control by domination and subjugation. And so the lifetimes we were talking about, the choice of lifetimes when we incarnate, neither path is the correct path. The service to others path is the more direct path back to the Creator, because those choosing service to self may spend billions of years trying to advance within their path, but there's a brick wall. They can't go any farther than that brick wall. And it's apparently not, they are not able to see that brick wall regardless of their higher consciousness level. But once they hit that brick wall, they can either stay there or they can go back to where they dropped out of school and pick up where they left off along the service to others path. So there's only one path of unity with the Creator, but you can either go directly there or you can take the long way about. And if you think of the kid that dropped out of high school because he was too cool for school, and he's looking in the window from the outside trying to get the information that is being offered in the classroom, but he can't get it because he can't hear everything that the instructor is saying. And so that's essentially the service to self path. They've alienated themselves from the benefits of reuniting with the Creator. And most of the things that people perceive to be demons or scary paranormal things are these higher consciousness service to self beings that want to stimulate fear within third density. Third density is kind of like the Goldilocks density, because we have enough energy that it's worth stealing, but we're too stupid not to give it up. And so it's just right. It's it's the kid stuff that is easy pickings, and Earth is an easy pickings experience because we keep cycling within the lower dimensions of the density, which makes us a prime long-term source of energy. And when the service to self separates itself from a realignment with the Creator, what they lose is that source of, it's called intelligent energy, that powers us, that powers our mind, our bodies, and all of that. And so they need to get that from somewhere, and they get that by inducing fear into our lower awareness consciousness.
which makes sense. And I mean, so you keep you keep saying like third density, second density. How many densities are there altogether?
Well, it depends on who you ask. There are essentially 8 densities, but the lower 5 densities, the first 2 densities are foundational densities, as we talked about. The next 3 are experiential densities because we are experiencing primarily, beginning with 6 densities. 6th and 7th density are creator being densities. 6th density is a very broad density, and they essentially have creation and management duties for all of the lower 5 densities. So when we, I don't know if you're familiar with the raw material that was channeled by a St. Louis group in the early 80s. Raw was the 6th density entity, and they are very involved with their day-to-day operation. All of our higher selves are 6th density. That's part of their honor and duty, is to serve as our higher selves and to provide us with guidance on our evolutionary path. 4th density is what Earth is becoming. And the 4th density is essentially the healing period from the distortions that we created in 3rd density. At the end of 4th density, one of the signals that we are ready to graduate to 5th density is that we surrender the authenticity of the physical world. And so we no longer have to incarnate. We will just be our metaphysical self.
Interesting. All right, I think I get it now. I mean, so if demons and all these other evil things, revengeful spirits, if they are all just beings who are self-serving and that's what they become,
Mm-hmm.
what would you consider what we call angels or spirit guides? Like, are they actually from the creator, or are they beings that were so unselfish that they became good?
Well, there's not a separate legion of angels. If a 6th density being appeared to anybody on Earth, they would appear like the most outstanding archangel that we could imagine. They're not physical. They don't need physicality anymore. They are a social memory complex. So when they speak to us, they speak as a group. In the podcast that I'm currently producing, participating in, it's called Chatting with the Arcturians, and we chat with one voice that speaks for the Arcturians. The Arcturians are a 9-star system, and we are part of a different 9-star system. Creation has expanded in 9-star groups. Our entire universe is a 9-star universe. Each star is home to an archetype of the creator. And there are 5 inherent characteristics of the creator that are all archetypes. And those 5 inherent characteristics are awareness, love, wisdom, unity, and stillness. And so those are 5 of our 9-star archetypes. And the other 4 are distortions. Free will is a part of every experience, and it is an archetype of the creator, even though it is a distortion. We also are comprised of motion, movement, an intensified perception of separation, and Lucifer. Now, Lucifer is got a bad rep, but Lucifer is actually a distortion of a distortion. It is an archetype of the creator, and it is relatively speaking, a minor participant, but a very important participant, because its purpose is to, it is the light bringer, but it functions very much like, if you remember probably in ninth grade general science, and you probably did a bean plant experiment where you planted a bean in full sunlight and gave it lots of water, and you put one in water and soil, but you covered it so that it got no light. And the bean plant with no light grew more quickly, but not in a healthy way, than the plant that was getting full sunlight. Did you ever do an experiment like that?
Yeah, I think that's what's it called? The Grendel experiment, or not the Grendel, the scientist. I can't think of his name. It starts with a G, I want to say, but
yeah, but you know what I'm talking about. The bean plant with no sunlight grew more quickly, but it was white. It didn't have any chlorophyll until it reached the sunlight, and then it began to mimic the pattern of the full sunlight bean. Well, Lucifer's purpose is the same way. Lucifer is unconsciousness. And so because we begin third density in unconsciousness, that's like depriving us of the sunlight. And so the plan is that it would make us grow through our evolutionary process more quickly. We have not, as a populace, been able to get over that hump. We're still that pale white bean plant growing within the shelter with the lack of sunlight as a population. So it's a positive intent, even though religion generally has taken it and made it something demonic. And of course they made a TV show about it.
Okay, I ain't gonna knock the TV show. I enjoy the TV show, but
yeah, well, I like the TV show too. But I mean, they bandied the name about and gave it a bad name.
I mean, yeah, I mean they've been doing that for years with pop culture, as far as Lucifer's concerned. But
yeah.
So let me ask you this though. I mean, because you use the term creator, but yet you're not exactly. You don't seem like the full-on religious type. So, what do you think the creator is? Because I mean, I've heard a lot of different explanations of what the creator is or what people think it is.
Well, the creator begins and ends in mystery, and so honestly, I don't. Creator is infinite, but that is a concept that was projected by the creator. So, creator is outside of creation. Now, we were talking about the densities before. The eighth density is the creator as the subject. The creator, the originating creator, is outside of creation and is the creator as the object. And so the first thing that was created, the creator is the object, projected the concept of infinity, and also simultaneously but parallel projected the concept of intelligence, which created the concept of intelligent infinity. And within that concept was projected the creator as the subject. So the creator of the subject has the same awareness and capabilities as the creator as the object, but it perceives of itself as separate from the creator as the object. And by virtue, if the creator had the ambition of knowing itself by experiencing itself, it couldn't distort itself because it was everything. It was all that there is. And so in order to experience itself, it projected itself as the creator, as the subject, and by virtue of that, created an entity to interact with it. And through that experience, it learned of itself. The creator as the subject has created all that we experience. Everything that we perceive, everything that we're talking about is all a product of the creator as the subject. Creation is a huge, giant thought experiment. And if you're familiar with philosophers' repeated creation of thought experiments in order to investigate what might happen, or to, try to figure out how things work. All of creation is a huge thought experiment. It is conceptual. We are conceptual. Everything that we experience are conceptual, but also we are the creator, intoxicated with free will to allow us to explore consciousness at the level that we are able to do so. But we are also evolving within that structure until we conclude our experiences of creation by reunification and surrendering of all of our perceptions of separation.
All right, I can kind of wrap my head around that. I mean, that's a lot to,
It's a lot.
take
It
in.
is. Yeah. But we're
So
recording this. So
exactly. Can study it all I need to. So the creator that created us is the same creator that created extraterrestrials, or is it possible that the creator is an extraterrestrial that has been around before we were even a thought?
Well, no, extraterrestrials, we perceive time because part of the third density experience limits our capacity to process more than one thought at a time. So, and that is a requirement of our incarnation. When we are beyond this level of consciousness, then part of the process is that we expand our awareness and we process simultaneously our entire experience. And so we're outside of time. The time is not a structure, it is a mechanism that we experience and are required to experience because we can only process one thought at a time. Because we process one thought at a time, we perceive it to be linear. But it also is recorded. And so consequently, we can review the game films, when we're not incarnate, see what we did wrong. And if you ever saw the movie Defending Your Life that Albert Brooks did with Meryl Streep.
Oh, I've heard of the movie. I know what it is. I just never actually sat down and watched it yet.
Great movie. And it actually, it's obviously made into a comedy, but it's not extremely different from our experience of creation. It's actually pretty close to our experience of creation.
Interesting. I mean, so you said that humans came to this planet, what was it, 857 or 67,000 years ago?
No, we came to Earth about, it's about 76,000 years ago.
Okay, so was there actually, was there actually dinosaurs then? Like, because if we came 76,000 years ago, they would have been, I believe, already wiped out by something.
Yeah, no, dinosaurs were long gone. This third density experience that we just completed was the first experiential density experience that Earth had participated in. It had been a first and second density planet for a long time before, and the planet hadn't been a protected third density experience, and so there was lots of visitations by other, you would probably call them aliens. And so it had visitations, but not an experience, a density experience before. Our experience was the first density experience on the planet, other than the first and second density. And so there are remnants of those visitations from a long time ago that predate that 76,000 years, but it was not a density experience. But other third density experiences are more advanced than we are, but they are not awareness or consciously more advanced than our potential. And it is very, for example, there's a planet that is in orbit around Sirius B, and Sirius B is one of the planets. Sirius A and Sirius B are both part of our 9-star system, and the body types that are chosen for a third density experience are taken from the available body types that are already in existence in the third and in the second density experience of that planet. But this planet that is in orbit around Sirius B has been a very successful third density experience, but the body types are trees. And we would say that tree can't think, it doesn't have a brain. Well, it has a mind. It doesn't need a centralized brain. It has a mind. And it has been a very successful third density experience, much more successful than our experience. But there is a curriculum to third density. And to fulfill that curriculum, one of the things that you have to experience is bellicosity. Well, as you can imagine, a tree is going to be hard pressed to experience bellicosity unless there's a big windstorm and maybe slap each other about, limbs and stuff. But that notwithstanding, they had to experience bellicosity to fulfill their course curriculum for third density, and they visited Earth telepathically and experienced bellicosity, which was in ample supply on Earth, in order to fulfill their curriculum for third density graduation. But we have that capacity, but we have not developed that capacity because we have remained mired in the lower dimensions of the density. We have great capacity. We have great capabilities that we've never developed.
Which, I mean, every time you say that the third density is ending and the fourth density is beginning on Earth, it makes me like kind of think, where it's like, I'm like, we've had a spiritual awakening in the last decade and a half to decade, basically, at some point. Is that
the varying degrees? Yeah. Well, they're the vibrational level, the consciousness level of the planet has far surpassed our capacity as a population to experience it. And the population has, for the most part, experienced increasing angst or anxiety because the vibration of the planet has risen beyond the third density level. And so a lot of these folks that are going around and shooting people arbitrarily, and the wars and the political advocates that are trying to take us back to the good old days and stuff like that, they are experiencing the irritation between the higher vibrational density of the planet and their own personal experience. And so it's irritating to them, and so they don't like it, and they can't function within the new environment.
Yeah, I mean, and they're trying to save what they can of their environment before they're eventually wiped out anyway, or forced to move on to their next eventual body.
You just move to the next planet and continue your experience. I mean, this was the 5th try, and I don't know how many people we graduated, but not very many, I'm sure. But there's no, you can keep doing it as long as you need to in order to fulfill the curriculum requirements.
I mean, and I find it funny that we came from Mars before this planet, and yet now there's people trying to go back to Mars, thinking.
Oh yeah, Mars is occupied. Mars is fully occupied by fourth density negative civilization.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it
all of the UFOs that you see flying around? The UFOs are real. They're service to self, because they are not restricted from interfering with. Well, they're not. they don't feel the necessity of honoring our isolation because they need to induce fear in us in order to liberate that energy that they need to steal. So almost all of the UFOs that are flying around, and because they're going to service to self, they have to require more on technology than the service to others, because the service to others, you just think about going someplace and you're there. You just manifest it because they're pursuing unity with the Creator, and so they're surrendering the restrictions and the distortions that prevent them from freely interacting with the rest of the universe. The service to self is separating themselves from those capabilities by virtue of their more myopic functioning, and so they require greater technology. And so the technology is the UFOs we see flying around. If the service to others wants to make an appearance, which they have done, if they want to make an appearance, then they have to fabricate the image of a UFO just so they won't all of a sudden just appear in front of us.
Makes sense. I mean, better to hide in a ship, and I mean, they even got our government telling us that UFOs are real. So, I mean,
yeah, well,
obviously
UFOs are real.
Oh, I never doubted that, but
and matter of fact, the service to others, higher beings, when Dwight Eisenhower was president, they presented themselves to President Eisenhower and for the purpose of inquiring whether he thought that the population was ready to begin communication with extraterrestrials. And he said, no. I said, okay, we're going to take you at your word. And they toddled off.
Was that the Mighty Thor incident?
Don't know about the Mighty Thor incident.
There's or was it Mighty Thor or Almighty Thor? But there was a incident when Eisenhower was president that is, I believe, called the Mighty Thor incident, and it's basically what you just described. It was an extraterrestrial that came and talked to Eisenhower, stayed in the with the DoD and the Pentagon for a few weeks, and basically talked to all of Earth's leaders, and eventually left. But he was called the Valiant Thor. I'm sorry, it's called Valiant Thor, not Almighty Thor. The Valiant Thor.
I don't think they met with a whole bunch of people. They just kind of kept it on the QT and met with Eisenhower. And Eisenhower was considered to be a very rational and good judge of the condition of the human population at the time, based on all of his experiences. And he said, "Nah, they're not ready for this, folks." And so they went away.
He wasn't. I don't think he was wrong, but
I don't think he was wrong either. I think he would be right even today.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, the human population today can't handle basic things, which is also the other thing that I don't get. Because if we're supposed to kind of evolve spiritually, why is there so much? Why would the Creator put so much stress in our lives and so much just suffering? Like, because some people, not necessarily me, but some people in the world have a lot of stress and a lot of suffering, more than any human being should be able to handle.
Funny you should mention that. I have a book that I've written called The Identity Model, Understanding and Healing Humanity's Stress and Suffering. And it describes why we are as we are, why we experience stress, and why we continue to experience suffering. And stress is our teacher. We don't recognize that, and so we refuse to learn the lessons that stress brings us. Suffering is nothing more than continuing to experience the same stress over and over and over.
Makes sense. And I mean, yeah, I mean, it's true. I can tell you that much. As a homeowner, I've experienced plenty of stress in the last couple of years. But so as we're getting near the end of this, let me ask you this. It may seem like a simple question, but Lord knows it's not. What do you think is in store for Earth's future?
I think
Are we?
I think marvelous things for Earth's future. The population that is the predominant population today will move on to the new planet, and they will begin a new third density experience and have the opportunity to evolve within the range of consciousness that they currently occupy. Earth will become a fourth density positive planet. It is a fourth density positive planet. And the population that is now coming into majority by virtue of the children that are being born will begin their process of evolving through the fourth density. Third density's defining objective is to become awareness. That is the big one of the big signals for readiness to graduate to fourth density. Fourth density does the same thing with love. And so the defining characteristics of Earth population will be the exploration and understanding to new depths of what love is.
Interesting. And I mean, well, I mean, that sounds like a bright future, and I 100% hope you're right because, I mean, the way the world's looking right now, it's not looking like we're in good shape with
Well,
military
this is the end of
everywhere.
third density. We're seeing the population is third density still for the majority. And what you're seeing is the angst that the third density population is feeling by the lack of compatibility with the higher vibration of the Earth. And so it's a tenuous period. There's not going to be an intervention to stop it, but the Earth is going within the next 30 to 40 years is going to see dramatic transformation of what the population looks like.
And that could be, I mean, it might have a good end out to it all eventually, but the process could be good or bad depending on what happens in the future.
Well, the tenuous period is probably the next 10 years until the children begin to assume responsibility for leadership and management and simply living, and all the old folks begin to depart and move to their new station in the evolutionary process.
Interesting. So another 10 years of this hell. Okay. Good to know.
You can
Good
do
to
it.
know.
You can do it, Jeremy.
I so hope so. But
just buckle in, put your helmet on. You'll be all right.
I'm trying. I mean, but now we got freaking holes in the sun to worry about too, and I'm just like, what the heck is going on up there?
Yeah, the sun, our sun, is part of the 9-star system. Obviously, it is the home to law. Law is the is wisdom, and so we have good guidance from there. We are a Ra planet. If you remember Ra from Egyptian fables, Ra actually is one of the it is the archetype of love, and it is the predominant influence in our population's creation. So we're in good hands.
Well, I take your word for it, and I mean, I have a feeling you're right, just because I do get feelings for these things once in a while, and I always feel like everything's gonna be okay at the end of the day. But you have to, otherwise you're just gonna drive yourself insane.
It's true.
Before we wrap this up, I know you did write 3 other books as well, so why don't you tell my audience about what each of your books is about briefly, and then where they can find them.
Okay. Well, I have 3 books that are currently available on Amazon. One is called Enlightenment Plain and Simple, and I recommend it for someone who is just beginning this path. it's targeted towards someone who needs to begin the process of healing. The other two other books, one is I mentioned earlier, The Identity Model. It was written actually for mental health professionals, but it is simple to read, and it has some very helpful exercises that in the appendix that you can self-apply to heal from traumas, to heal from emotional baggage, grief, any emotions that you're dealing with that you can't get past. This book will explain why you were feeling those, why you were experiencing stress, and what you can do, what you need to do, we all need to do in order to heal and get past those. The third book that's immediately available is called Edifying Children of a Lesser God, and it is a brief introductory of some of the topics that we addressed tonight, but really didn't go into, answering existential questions. And I have a compendium book that is being released later in 2024 called The Enigma of Consciousness, and it is my compendium of all of this information. This will explain in great detail everything that we talked about tonight and much more. And it is currently available for pre-order through John Hunt Publishing. Again, it's called The Enigma of Consciousness, and it will be available later in 2024, but you can pre-order it now.
Interesting. I honestly might have to pick them all up because they seem like some good reads to kind of understand things more. And I've been working with a Reiki master personally to try to open myself up more, align my chakras, make sure I'm living the way I should be living. So
nobody can align your chakras but you. I had a guy call me several years ago, and he wanted to know how much I would charge him to align his chakras. And I said, well, I that's something that you have to do. And he said, well, my spiritual teacher wants to charge me $7,000 to align my chakras. And I thought, well, you need to get a new spiritual teacher because nobody can do that but you. And he said, okay.
Gotta love those scams that people put out there and make people not believe in this.
They're amazing. Yeah, they really are.
I've heard about so many of them on the show that I just, every time I hear them, it's like, oh, not another. This is why people don't believe in this type in meditation. People don't believe in manifestation because of those scammers out there.
A lot of charlatans. Yeah.
Really, it truly is, and the internet makes it easier for them. But
it does. Yeah. But people are, there's still the indication people want the information and they want to move forward. And that's what's encouraging. Unfortunately, they get scammed a lot, but it's still that, that desire out there.
Yeah, I actually had one try to get me yesterday. Literally, she duplicated the account of a starseed psychic I know that has been on my show, and like she was trying to tell me like, oh, she has a message for me, and then like I'm like, okay, and then it's like, but I need a donation in my PayPal first. I immediately messaged my friend on another app, and I'm like, is this you? And she's like, no, that's a scam. Do not do it. Do not do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's why I asked, because I had a feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean,
but you may find the chatting with the Arcturians also of interest, as well as your population, and that is a regular conversation that I have with the Arcturians, and they speak to us as one voice, but it is a sixth entity that we're chatting with. Actually, it's the whole 9-star system.
Trust me, as soon as you said that, as soon as you described what that was earlier in the show, I was like, oh, I am definitely checking that out.
Okay. Well, we chat. It's a very relaxed conversation, and it's very informative, I think. So.
I will definitely be informed by it, I'm sure. So.
Okay.
I look forward to listening to that.
Great.
And to all my listeners, all the links to Dean's books, to his podcast, will all be in the description when the podcast releases, of course, for you to have easy access. And for all those who have watched and all those who will listen, thank you. Like and subscribe. And if you don't know where you can find me by now, then you're not manifesting right, because you would find me if you manifested right. Come on. But check the outro. You'll get all my links in the outro, and you can find me that way. I want to thank Dean for coming on because this has been a truly enlightening conversation, and I mean, I'm going to be putting this all together in my head for a few days and listening to this recording again and again to try to understand it all. But that, that's the way life works, and that means it was a good conversation if you have to listen more than once. And wow, my mind is still all twisted from this, and I love it. This is why I love this podcast. I love these kind of conversations. Make you question life. It's the great thing.
Well, I thank you very much for having me, Jeremy. I've enjoyed it, and if I can be of service to you in the future, please feel free to call upon me.
I shall remember that. And thank you once again, and to everybody, have a good night.